In the golden age of television, one show defied every rule. It ran for 9 seasons, survived cancellation, and brought back an entire cast that studios said would never work together again. But the real story isn't about ratings or network politics. It's about the hidden reasons why the most beloved characters almost never made it to the end. What happened behind closed doors was something producers desperately tried to keep secret, until now. When Last Man Standing first premiered on ABC in 2011, nobody thought it would last more than a season. The network had low expectations. Critics were lukewarm. And frankly, the premise seemed tired, a conservative father struggling in a modern world. It felt like something from the 1990s, recycled for a new decade. But something unexpected happened. Audiences showed up. Not just a few thousand viewers. Millions of them. By the end of the first season, Last Man Standing was consistently hitting 8 to 10 million viewers. That's massive for network television. Yet despite these incredible numbers, something was deeply wrong behind the scenes. The show's creator, Jack Burdett, had a vision. Tim Allen, the star, had his own ideas. And the network executives? They were caught between two worlds, a show that made money but didn't fit their image. Here's what most people don't realize: ABC was changing. The network wanted edgy, serialized dramas. They wanted to compete with cable. But Last Man Standing was something different. It was traditional sitcom storytelling with heartfelt moments. It was funny without being cruel. And most importantly, it was politically incorrect in ways that made network executives nervous. The ratings kept climbing. Season after season, the show pulled in audiences that rivaled network dramas. Yet ABC's leadership remained skeptical. They saw the numbers, but they didn't see prestige. They didn't see awards. What they saw was a show that didn't match their new direction. In 2017, after 6 seasons, ABC made a shocking decision. They canceled the show. Completely. No warning. No goodbye season. Just gone. But the cancellation wasn't really about ratings. It was about something far more complicated, and far more personal. The truth was hidden in plain sight, but nobody was paying attention to what happened next. To understand why ABC really canceled Last Man Standing, you have to understand what was happening in television in 2017. This wasn't just about one show. It was about ideology, ratings, and the silent war happening inside network offices across America. ABC was owned by Disney. Disney had a specific vision for their brand. They wanted to appeal to younger, more progressive audiences. They wanted shows that reflected their values. And Last Man Standing, with its conservative-leaning protagonist and traditional family values, didn't fit that image anymore. But here's the uncomfortable truth that networks don't like to admit: the show's audience was massive and loyal. The ratings proved it. Yet ratings alone weren't enough to save a show that the network's leadership had decided didn't represent them. Behind closed doors, executives at ABC were facing pressure from multiple directions. Advertisers wanted to reach millennial audiences. Critics were becoming more vocal about representation and progressive storytelling. And internally, there was a growing sentiment that Last Man Standing was becoming a liability, not an asset. One network executive later admitted in interviews that the decision to cancel wasn't based purely on numbers. It was based on brand alignment. This created an impossible situation for Tim Allen and the cast. They had delivered consistent ratings. They had created beloved characters. They had built a community of viewers who tuned in every week. Yet none of that mattered because the network had already decided the show's fate. The cancellation announcement came suddenly, shocking fans and the cast alike. But what happened next revealed something even darker about how television really works. The cast refused to accept the cancellation quietly. They fought back. Tim Allen used his massive social media following to rally fans. The crew organized watch parties. Viewers launched campaigns online. Nobody was willing to let this show die without a fight. And against all odds, their rebellion worked. Fox picked up the show. A network that was rebuilding its comedy lineup saw an opportunity. Here was a show with proven ratings, a loyal fanbase, and a cast willing to fight for their characters. This wasn't just a network saving a show. This was a revolution in how television worked. When Fox offered to revive Last Man Standing, Tim Allen and the cast faced a choice that very few actors ever get. They could walk away. Accept the cancellation. Move on to other projects. Many agents advised them to do exactly that. In Hollywood, canceled shows are considered bad luck. They're associated with failure. Starting fresh on a new project is usually the smarter career move. But Tim Allen didn't think like most actors. He believed in the show. He believed in these characters. And more importantly, he believed in the fans who had supported them. So he did something that shocked the industry. He convinced the entire main cast to stay. Not one person left. Not one negotiation fell apart. Against every piece of conventional wisdom, they all agreed to continue. This was a genuine gamble. Moving from ABC to Fox meant uncertainty. Would the ratings follow? Would the fanbase migrate to a new network? Would advertisers support a show on a network known more for dramas than comedies? Nobody knew. The cast was betting their careers on loyalty. They were choosing principle over guaranteed paychecks elsewhere. What made this even more remarkable was the personal sacrifice involved. Most of the cast had been together for 6 years. They had developed real friendships. They understood their characters so deeply that they could practically perform them in their sleep. But continuing meant signing new contracts, negotiating new deals, and committing to more years of uncertain television work. For some of the supporting cast members, this was a significant financial risk. Yet here's what's fascinating: during this transition period, tensions within the cast began to emerge. Moving networks wasn't just a business decision. It was personal. Some cast members had outside opportunities they were giving up. Some had family considerations. Behind the scenes, difficult conversations were happening. Not all of them pleasant. The real story of Last Man Standing wasn't about the network politics or the ratings battles. It was about what happened to the people involved when they chose loyalty over security. And the pressure was about to become unbearable. The move to Fox should have been a celebration. The show had survived cancellation. The fans had won. The cast had stayed together. But behind the scenes, something was breaking apart. The emotional toll of fighting for the show, combined with the uncertainty of a new network, created tension that nobody had anticipated. One of the most shocking moments came when rumors began circulating about cast members considering leaving. This wasn't public information. This was whispered in production offices and discussed in private meetings. Some of the supporting cast felt underutilized. They worried about their careers stalling if the show didn't succeed on Fox. The pressure was crushing in ways that outsiders couldn't see. Tim Allen, as the lead and the driving force behind keeping everyone together, felt the weight of those doubts personally. He had convinced people to stay. He had promised that this move would work. If it didn't, he felt responsible. That kind of pressure changes people. It makes them anxious. It makes them question their own decisions. Meanwhile, the production itself was dealing with real challenges. Moving a show between networks isn't simple. Sets had to be rebuilt. Contracts had to be renegotiated. The entire production infrastructure had to shift. Crew members who had been with the show since day one found themselves uncertain about their futures. Some didn't make the transition to Fox. Others had to take pay cuts. The human cost of this victory was significant and often invisible. What emerged during this period was a difficult truth: the cast wasn't as unified as it appeared. Some members had genuine concerns about the show's future. Others felt resentment about the sacrifices they'd made. These weren't world-ending conflicts, but they were real. They created distance where there had been closeness. They introduced doubt where there had been confidence. Then came the moment that changed everything. One cast member nearly walked away completely. The negotiations came close to falling apart. There were heated conversations. There were tears. There were moments where it genuinely seemed like the reunion wouldn't happen. What stopped that person from leaving became one of the most touching stories from the entire production, a conversation that revealed how deeply this show had affected everyone involved. But the damage to the group's unity had already been done. When Last Man Standing finally premiered on Fox in September 2018, something felt different. The show looked the same. The characters sounded the same. But if you watched carefully, you could sense a shift in the energy. The cast was tired. Not physically tired, but emotionally exhausted. They had fought so hard to keep this show alive that the victory itself felt hollow. The ratings on Fox were solid but not spectacular. They weren't the massive numbers the show had pulled on ABC. This created new anxiety. Had the gamble failed? Was the fanbase really following them to the new network, or had something been lost in the transition? For Tim Allen and the producers, every ratings report felt like a judgment day. But something remarkable started happening around season 8. The cast seemed to find new energy. They understood that this was borrowed time. Fox had given them a second chance that most shows never get. So they decided to make every episode count. The writing sharpened. The performances deepened. There was a gratitude woven into the storytelling that hadn't been there before. Yet during this period, crucial decisions were being made about the show's future. Would there be a season 9? Would it be the final season? These conversations were happening in executive offices and between producers and network heads. And crucially, the cast wasn't always kept in the loop. Some found out about renewal decisions through industry trades rather than direct communication. That kind of exclusion stings. It reminds actors that they're employees, not partners. By season 9, everyone understood this would be the end. Not officially announced at first, but everyone could feel it. This was the goodbye season. This was the chance to wrap up stories properly. This was the opportunity to give characters the send-offs they deserved. The cast brought everything to those final episodes. They performed like people saying goodbye to something they loved. What made the ending particularly poignant was that several cast members had genuinely considered leaving before they got there. If certain negotiations had gone differently, if certain conversations had happened in different ways, the show might have ended with incomplete farewells. Some characters might have simply disappeared rather than being given proper conclusions. The final episode aired in May 2021. 9 seasons. Hundreds of episodes. A journey that began with uncertainty and ended with hard-won closure. But the real story of why the show ended, and why certain characters left when they did, was far more complex than what aired on screen. Here's what most viewers never realized: the characters who left Last Man Standing didn't all leave for the same reasons. Some departures were planned. Others were sudden. And a few were the result of behind-the-scenes negotiations that revealed uncomfortable truths about how television really treats its actors. Christoph Sanders, who played Kyle, decided to leave the show before the final season. On the surface, it seemed like a simple career choice. He wanted to pursue other opportunities. He wanted to explore different characters. But the deeper story was more complicated. Sanders had been with the show since season 2. He had grown up on set, literally and professionally. By season 9, he was in his 30s, and he was worried about being typecast. He was worried about his future. The decision to leave wasn't about not loving the show. It was about survival in an industry that moves fast and forgets quickly. When Sanders announced his departure, it sent shockwaves through the cast. He was beloved. His character had become central to the show's heart. His absence in the final season was deeply felt, both by the remaining cast and by viewers. But what few people understood was that his decision to leave early was actually brave. He recognized that the show had given him everything it could, and he needed to move on to protect his career. Then there were the actors who stayed until the very end. Amanda Fuller, who played Kristen, completed the entire run. Neil Flynn, who played Mike Baxter's best friend Chuck, stayed through the finale. These weren't easy decisions either. They meant committing to years of uncertainty. They meant believing that the show's revival would actually work. They meant trusting Tim Allen's vision when that vision was being tested daily. But here's the part that rarely gets discussed: several cast members experienced genuine health issues and personal crises during the show's run. Some had family emergencies that nearly forced them to leave. Others dealt with burnout that was so severe they questioned whether they could continue. The show's demanding schedule, combined with the emotional weight of fighting for its survival, took a real toll. These aren't glamorous stories. Networks don't publicize them. But they're true. The character of Vanessa Simmons, played by Nancy Travis, almost didn't make it through the entire run. Travis had been with the show since the beginning. She was the emotional anchor. But between seasons 7 and 8, she went through a period where she seriously considered stepping back. The reasons were personal, but they were real. It took conversations with Tim Allen and the producers to convince her to stay. She did. And her performance in those final seasons reflected someone who had nearly walked away but chose to stay. What really happened to the characters, then, was this: they aged. They changed. They made sacrifices. Some left when they needed to. Others stayed when they could have gone. And through it all, they created something that mattered to millions of people. But the show's legacy extends far beyond what happened to the cast. When Last Man Standing finally ended in May 2021, something shifted in how television understood its relationship with loyal audiences. This show had proven something that networks had forgotten: a dedicated fanbase could literally resurrect a cancelled series. That wasn't supposed to be possible. That wasn't how the business worked. Yet it happened. The impact was immediate and measurable. Other cancelled shows suddenly had hope. Fans of shows like Manifest and The OA launched their own campaigns to bring their favorites back. Some succeeded. Some didn't. But the template that Last Man Standing had created, where audience loyalty could challenge network decisions, was now part of the television landscape. This show had changed the rules. But the deeper legacy was more personal. Last Man Standing became a case study in what happens when a cast genuinely cares about their work. In an industry often characterized by cynicism and career calculation, Tim Allen and his ensemble had chosen principle. They had chosen loyalty. They had chosen the fans. Not all actors would make that choice. Not all would have the platform or the leverage to do so. But those who did learn something profound. Sometimes the thing that matters most isn't the money or the awards. It's the connection you've built with people who've let you into their homes every week. The show also revealed something uncomfortable about network television. It showed that decisions about what gets cancelled and what survives aren't purely about numbers. They're about ideology, branding, and the political beliefs of the people making those decisions. ABC's initial cancellation wasn't a failure of the show. It was a failure of the network to recognize that their audience was broader and more diverse than they wanted to admit. That lesson echoed through the industry. For the cast members who stayed through all 9 seasons, the experience left permanent marks. Some, like Tim Allen, emerged as symbols of perseverance. Others found peace in knowing they had fought for something they believed in, even when the odds were against them. A few, like Christoph Sanders, learned that sometimes leaving is the bravest choice you can make. The final episodes of Last Man Standing aired to millions of viewers who had watched these characters grow and change for nearly a decade. When the series ended, it wasn't with a bang. It was with quiet dignity. The Baxter family had made it through. They had survived cancellation, network changes, cast departures, and personal crises. And in doing so, they had created something that would last far longer than any ratings number. Today, Last Man Standing reruns continue to find new audiences. Streaming platforms keep the show alive for people discovering it for the first time. And the cast, scattered now across different projects, occasionally reunite on social media to celebrate what they built together. The show became more than a sitcom. It became a testament to what's possible when people refuse to accept defeat. But this story isn't the only mystery that remained unsolved in television history. The next story on this channel reveals something even more surprising about what really happened behind the scenes of another beloved show, one where the cast's departure wasn't their choice at all.